afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. I want to thank Matthews and Company Realty for the lunch today and for their continued support of this program. And I want to introduce Deb Day of the United Way of Northern New Jersey Caregivers Coalition.
Hello. Actually, there's a lot of familiar faces here. I used to play tennis with Mika. I know a number of you, which is very nice. We know each other. Welcome, everyone. So my name is Deborah Day, and I run the Caregivers Coalition at United Way of Northern New Jersey, which is down the street a little bit in Montclair, just next to the Montclair Public Library. And what I do is a program called the Caregivers Coalition. We define a caregiver as an unpaid family member, friend, neighbor, coworker, who provides care for, it could be full-time, it could be part-time, it could be long distance, it could be you're caring for, it could be something where you're checking in once a week or you're visiting the person multiple times a day. It runs the gamut of situations. When you're a caregiver, typically you get the phone call in the middle of the night that you now have this job, and most people have no idea what to do or where to go or who to turn to. They don't know what the things are that they really need to put in place right away, what phone calls to make. So it's kind of a terrifying situation. When you become a caregiver, you become an instant expert in a number of things. I'm a caregiver for my mother right now. I do all her medical bills. I do all her everything bills. I take her to her doctor's appointments. She's actually able to do a lot for herself, so I'm not doing any of the activities of daily living for her, which is lucky, but that's certainly a huge part of what a lot of caregivers do. You could be handling, like I said, their insurance, their benefits. It could be emotional support. It certainly is that. It could be advocacy for them, fighting to get them the benefits that you know they're entitled to that people are not giving them. It could be making sure their legal documents are in place. It could be making sure that they're getting the proper medical treatment. It could be you're the person at the hospital who's fighting to make sure that everything's happening the way it should, they're getting the right attention they need. It's a whole number of things that fit into the definition of a caregiver. Some interesting statistics on caregivers. In our country, 43.5 million Americans are caregivers. That's age 18 plus people, and that's 18.2% of the entire population. And that's only going to get bigger. As maybe you would expect, 60% of caregivers are women, but 40% of men was surprising to me. That's actually a lot of men are caregivers. 82% of caregivers take care of one person, and 75% of caregivers are age 75 years plus, and more likely to be caregiving without any other help, which is a little scary. Caregivers, on average, are in the role for 4 years. It's a long time to be doing that kind of a job. And 24% are in that role of a caregiver for more than 5 years. Higher hour caregivers, meaning people who spend more hours every day doing it, are twice as likely to be in the role for more than 10 years. So you can imagine someone with a condition that just lasts and lasts and lasts. There's a lot of caregivers in that situation. On average, caregivers spend 24 hours a week doing care. In addition to if they have a job, there's that. In addition to if they have a family, there's that. So it's a really enormous burden added onto anyone's life. And burden's not the right word. It's just a stress on a caregiver, spending that many hours doing it. 23% of caregivers spend more than 41 hours a week doing it, on top of everything else in their life. And 59% of caregivers help with at least one of the activities of daily living, which include eating, bathing, dressing, ambulating, and those things. And 48% of caregivers who are helping with all 6 of the activities of daily living find it very difficult. That's no surprise. The vast majority of caregivers don't identify themselves as caregivers, which is really kind of fascinating. And when we've discovered this, we scratched our heads a little bit and said, okay, That really doesn't make sense. They identify themselves as a spouse or a mother or a father or a neighbor, but they don't consider themselves a caregiver. And because of that, they tend to be more isolated and overwhelmed, and they don't know where to turn to help because they're not asking for help because they don't consider themselves a caregiver. So it's an interesting statistic, and I've seen it over and over again where I'm talking to people thinking that I'm talking to them as a caregiver, and they're talking to me as a board member or as some other role. They don't identify themselves, even though they are a caregiver, as that. 90% of caregivers say they worry more and feel more stress. That's no surprise. They often put their own health and physical well-being at risk by being caregivers because they make that secondary. And that's a really dangerous thing. Why is caregiving so important? The issue of caregiving? Caregiving forces many people into a lower socioeconomic status and often onto welfare. It costs companies who have employees who are caregivers from $17 to $34 billion in lost wages every year. Many caregivers are afraid to tell their employees that they're caregivers because their companies are not going to be understanding, and they're going to be immediately kind of sidetracked from whatever track they were on for management and more. Or they're going to be they're going to find a reason to let them go. We hear that kind of story all the time. People who need a significant amount of care cannot afford to pay for it because it's extremely expensive. I mean, the whole insurance issue I'm not going to get into, but the other factor is there's a shortage of trained professionals to help people. We have nursing students here, which is wonderful. But there is a shortage looming for right now, and it's only going to get worse as the baby boomer generation, my generation, continues to age. There are not enough people out there to help care for our loved ones. So with that said, the mainstay of the long-term healthcare system in our country is family members, unpaid family members. And 80% of long-term care is actually provided by family members in the home. So there are a lot of long-term care facilities that you know of, but the vast majority of our population that needs long-term care is getting that care in the home by a family member. And that is, if you value that in dollars nationally, it's about $470 billion a year. So our current health structure couldn't exist if we didn't have this support structure of family members providing care for their loved ones. It also costs 3 times more on average to be cared for at a facility than it does at home, understandably. So with that, it's obvious that caregiver health status is a national crisis. We did a major, we did a study of the caregivers that we work with, and just to assess the situation with their own health care, the health of the caregivers. And what they reported, they self-reported that their general and physical health status was far worse than non-caregivers. So we polled a lot of different people, and the caregivers are experiencing worse health. Not surprising at all. 21.7% report poor or fair health compared to 6% before they were a caregiver. So their health got significantly worse when they became a caregiver. 50% reported having to postpone or cancel their own medical and dental appointments to take care of their loved one, for various health caregiving issues. So it's a major, the health of caregivers is something that we're very concerned about. From a mental health standpoint, 22.9% of the caregivers that we surveyed reported moderate to severe depression. Not surprising. Compared to 6.9% in the general population. So it's an enormous number of caregivers that are feeling depression on and off during that journey of caregiving. 27% reported feeling very lonely. And 64% reported less than adequate social support. This is a very isolating job. So this is where we came into play. About 11 or 12 years ago, after we did multiple assessments in the community, we realized that there needed to be some sort of support for caregivers. And we put together the first Caregivers Coalition at United Way, which was in Morris County. And then 5 years later, 6 different United Ways merged into United Way of Northern New Jersey. So Sussex, Warren, Morris, Somerset, our suburban Essex, and Milburn, Short Hills, merged into one large United Way of Northern New Jersey. And we now have 5 different coalitions. Ours here in Essex County has been around for 6 years now. It's about, I would say, 1,200 members strong. And our mission is to provide support and access to resources for caregivers, to help them identify the fact that they are caregivers, and to give them the education and the support that they need. Curiously, in our northern New Jersey region, more than 225,000 of our residents, just in northern New Jersey, are unpaid family caregivers. So it's not a small number. It's a huge health crisis. Our objectives at the Caregivers Coalition are to, as I said, to provide services and resources to the caregivers. We want to provide increased access to the information on caregiving. We want to help respond to the gaps in service if we can. We try to advocate for policies and legislation that could help facilitate situations that would be more favorable for caregivers. We also want to provide networking opportunities for caregivers to meet providers in very comfortable, low-pressure environment where it's easy to have a conversation with someone and not feel like they're trying to sell you something. We also want them to be able to meet other caregivers and make new friends. And that actually happens a lot. We have a lot of people who come in little packs to our meetings, the caregivers, because they've now made a new posse of friends who maybe are going through the exact same caregiving issue or not. No matter what kind of care you're giving, it tends to be kind of similar. The stress you go through and what your life looks like tends to be fairly similar. So a lot of people, through all the activities that we have made some new friends, have found a facility that they like, or an attorney that they like, or a home health agency that they feel comfortable with, just by virtue of having met a whole cohort of people that we have at our events. Part of the 1,200 or so folks that I mentioned who are part of our coalition, first and foremost, the caregivers are our most important component of our coalition. And we have over 400 people that we've engaged over the last 6 years. Most of them still come to our events even after their caregiving situation has changed, because they've made friends and it's very good information for them. Also, members of our coalition are social service agencies, medical professionals, various for-profit and not-for-profit agencies, attorneys, faith-based organizations, anyone who has an interest in providing support to caregivers or is a caregiver is welcome to attend our events. And the way we define caregivers, to be more specific, is anyone who's caring for someone with a physical or developmental disability, a mental illness, or issues of aging. So we really cover the lifespan of caregiving. It could be a young mom with a child with developmental disability, on up through maybe a spouse caring for an aged, a wife caring for her older husband who has issues of dementia or just the day-to-day issues of aging. Anyone in those categories and everything in between is welcome to be part of our group. We don't consider a mom of a healthy child to be a caregiver. So that's just to make that distinction of who's members of our group. The vast majority of my group happens to be people caring for people with issues of aging, only because we first started out with money from the old senior service center, senior activity center. And so with that, we had to focus on caregivers of the aging, and that's where most of my group still comes from. which is actually kind of nice. But we're trying to attract everyone. Everyone is welcome to be part of it if you fit within that, the lifespan. What we do is we have a number of things that we've put together to help caregivers through this journey. So every second Tuesday of every month, we have a meeting at the Verona Community Center from 9:30 to 11, and we have an educational presentation with one of our subject matter experts. It could be on downsizing and moving. It could be on behaviors related, how to deal with behaviors related to Alzheimer's. It could be on the legal documents you need to have in place. It could be on something to do with developmental disabilities, how to prepare for your child with special needs who's about to turn 18. We have all different topics that we cover, and caregivers and providers are welcome to come. They have a presentation, they have a nice little breakfast, and again, they have the opportunity to network and meet some people, make some friends. So we do that the second Tuesday of every month. There's no RSVP required. You can just show up if it works for your schedule. We also have an evening series of presentations with a dinner that's provided. And those we did because a lot of the caregivers said to us, we work full time, what are you going to do for us? We can't go to the morning meetings. So we have 6-ish, 5 or 6 or 7 dinners every year in the evening, and they're all over the place depending on who hosts us. And then we have an educational presentation of those, and the Montclair Township graciously videotapes a number of them. So we have also an online series that's available to anyone at our website. With right now, it's got about 23 videotape presentations on all these topics. So if you aren't able to make one of our events, you can go online and at the leisure of your living room, watch the presentation, get the information. If you have questions, you can always get a hold of me, and I can put you in touch with whoever presented the information. Or if you decide, I need to talk to that attorney, I can put you in touch with the person. People call me all the time, I don't know what to do, who do I call? We don't typically make recommendations, but we will tell you who our partners are. And the people who are really loyal members are part of our online membership directory, which you can also go online and search by area and by need and find people who are supportive of what we do, which is people use all the time. We have this wonderful book that we did. This is I think the 4th version of it. It's called Pathways, and I would describe it as a how-to on being a caregiver. There's a section on aging, there's a section on disabilities, there's a section on mental illness, and there's a section that's really applicable to all caregivers. But it's sort of like when you become a caregiver in the middle of the night and you wake up and you think, I don't even know what to do or who to call. You open this book and it will walk you through all the things that need to take place immediately within the next week or so, all the phone calls you need to make, what are the things you need to think of to have in place and how to do it. It's a fabulous book. People swear by it. And I have a number of these in my car. If anyone doesn't have one already, you're welcome to get one from me. It's also completely online. So if you just want to look at the section on aging, for example, you can just go online to our website, and there's actually a PDF of that section of the whole book. You can download it or just read it online, whatever works for you. It's a great book, though. So if anyone would like that, it's available. We also have conferences every year, mostly every year. This year we held off on having one. We had 5 in a row, and we're probably planning to have a big caregiver expo in 2019, which will cover our whole northern New Jersey footprint. So that should be good. With great speakers, and we're going to give our providers the opportunity, if they want, to come and showcase what they do for caregivers. So that is what we're all about. Like I said, if you want to be a member, I actually have a membership form. It takes about 3 seconds to fill out. You can be informed of everything we do. I don't send out a lot of emails. I probably send out 2 a month, just reminding you of events that are coming up and what you need to sign up in advance for. I don't share my list with anyone. I'm very strict about that. People ask me for my list all the time because they want access to caregivers, and I don't share it. So if you'd like to be part of this list or part of the coalition, you're welcome to do that. It's open to anyone. My coalition is considered suburban Essex, but the urban parts of Essex and Passaic and Bergen counties don't really have coalitions like ours. So they're always calling saying, what do we do? And I say, come to our meeting. Everyone's welcome. So are there any questions about what we do?
Well, I didn't want to know, where are the meetings, suicide meetings, you said?
The meetings are at the Verona Community Center, which is at 880 Bloomfield Avenue in Verona. You know where the fire station is? It's right behind that. There's like big athletic fields behind it. That's where it is. It's a very nice place. And they're lovely to us. So that's where we meet every second Tuesday of every month.
What time is that?
It's from 9:30 to 11 on the second Tuesday of every month.
That the depression is such an issue, and I think it's becoming more and more as help is harder and harder to find. A lot of people that are caregiving, if they give up their job, they lose their own benefits, and that's a really hard thing. And we're seeing more and more people, my age and above, baby boomers that aren't even getting help for themselves for the depression.
It's a big problem. They're not getting help.
1 out of every 4, 1 out of every 5.
Yeah, so they're not getting help for
Their mental health or their physical health. And there's an alarming number of caregivers that actually pass away before the people that they're caring for. I wasn't going to say that, but it's a fact. Because they're not taking care of themselves. Because they don't have the time to. So, kind of fundamental to what we do is we try to tell caregivers, you must take care of yourself. You have to find a way to take care of your own physical and mental well-being. Even if it means you take a few hours away from caregiving, that's okay. Because if you're not a healthy caregiver, you're not going to be a good caregiver. And that's going to just accomplish nothing. So that's sort of what a lot of our presentations are driving at. Ways to become a better caregiver, a healthy caregiver, ways to kind of try to find a way to remove the stress in your life. Maybe do things more efficiently so you have a little more time to take a walk, to do a little exercise, something to take care of yourself. That's really the heart of what we're all about. But it's not an easy thing to do. It really isn't. And then when you have financial difficulties on top of it, because of the fact that you're spending a lot of money for the care of whoever you're taking care of, as well as maybe you've lost your own job because you can't put in all the hours that are required and be a caregiver, it's enormously stressful. It's a huge problem.
I know someone who's a caregiver for her cousin and her husband. Do you have something there that I can hand over to her so she can take advantage of this?
Sure, she can take one of these books, or I'll give you 2 of them. This is the kind of the how-to on caregiving. If you want, do they live around here? So if you want to put them on the list, and they can get my information as well. If you want to fill out a membership form for them, they can become part of the coalition and get the things that Yeah, great. But I'll give you a couple of these to take with you for them. I don't have enough for everyone here, but I have lots. We have thousands back at our office. We just did a reprint. So if anyone wants this, just you can give me your address and I could either mail one to you or we could arrange for you to get one somehow.
How do you convince a friend that they need help? I'm taking care of my dad. Well, he just passed, but taking care of my dad. My mother's in a nursing home. I run and get her laundry. I do this, and for her, that's like the norm. And it's like, oh, this is just my life right now. So she doesn't feel like she needs any meetings, or how do you convince her that?
That's a tricky one.
I don't know how you convince them. Lee could probably address that. I think I can tell you that we know of a number of support groups that are that we've actually put online for people to find that are free and open to the public. And I think sometimes just going and meeting with a group, usually there's always a facilitator who's a social worker or a psychologist, and hearing other people talk about exactly what you're doing, maybe a light will go on and they'll say, gee, that's kind of what I'm going through too, and have that support to kind of then think about, do I want to do something about it? That's one suggestion. That's not a real difficult thing to do. Just say, why don't you go to a support group for an hour and see how it goes. See if you like it. Lee, do you have any other ideas? It's hard because people don't really want to be told what to do. You could kind of drip, and especially if it's a good friend, you can kind of say, or you could just maybe be the one who says, okay, I'm coming over, we're going for a walk for an hour. So not saying you're not taking care of yourself, but saying, let's do this. Or we're going to go out for lunch, so that you're forcing them to have a little bit of time for me. It's a tough one, though. Everyone thinks they know what they're doing. And that's a really hard job. And that person is kind of jeopardizing their own health by not taking care of themselves.
Yeah, they have already, that's why I was asking.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty common. Any other questions? No?
Are you talking about unpaid?
Yes. Yes. I'm not talking about like home health aides. That's a paid caregiver. We're talking about the family members, the friends, the neighbors who are doing any one of a number of things, like helping someone get dressed, paying their bills for them, getting their groceries for them, taking them out to do their errands, helping them with making their food for them. Any one of those type things. That's a caregiver. And that's why people don't define themselves as caregivers, because they just think, well, I'm just paying their bills for them. That's not a caregiver. Well, it actually is. And then if it ends up being a lot of those activities, as a person tends to age, they need more and more help. I mean, I'm watching it with my father-in-law. My husband's the caregiver, and it started out, he would come over every Sunday for dinner. And then he couldn't really make it out, so now we bring all his food to him. And then he didn't want to go with a walker, so he would kind of use the grocery cart in their building, like pretending that it was just to get his mail, but really it was to help him walk. And then he was like, okay, this walker is pretty good. So it's just gotten, it's getting more and more, and my husband's getting more and more involved. But he doesn't want to hear that he's not doing fine. He just doesn't want to discuss it. He's fine. It's really hard for the caregiver, and especially if the caregiver, the person they're caring for, is not necessarily going to admit that there's an issue either. It can be very complicated.
Just to add to that, the one thing that happens is, yes, sometimes it's very sudden. Oh my God, my husband had a stroke, he's going to be coming home with Kessler, and oh my God. Right. But there's some very sneaky ways of becoming a caregiver. Like your husband. You're doing little bits and pieces, and you do not recognize yourself as a caregiver because you don't realize that it's been adding and adding. So your life's getting squeezed and squeezed into a smaller and smaller, section. And, to actually commit and say, yeah, I've got to get to a group. It's just not always easy because you cannot recognize it. Right.
A month ago, his laundry started coming home with us. And it's fine. We love, this man is like a deer. But my husband, he does recognize himself as a caregiver because he's married to me, and I've told him he's a caregiver. But people don't always recognize it, because you're right, it can be very sneaky. That's the perfect word for it. But a lot of us are doing it, and it's only going to get more. So I guess why we're here is to tell you that we are here to help you if we can. As an aside, United Way does more than this. This is what I do, but we also are looking right now for people, and for this population, it's really kind of a perfect opportunity if you're interested. We're looking for people to be volunteer tax preparers. We will train you, like multiple training sessions, and to prepare simple tax returns come February of next year. And we also do free tax returns for anyone with I'm going to say not complicated tax return, which essentially means if you have a lot of money, your tax return is probably a little more complicated. There's no real income cutoff, but if you would like to get your taxes done at United Way, starting, I think, the end of the year, if not, usually it's sometime in January, you can call up and make an appointment and just come and get your taxes done for free. It's fabulous. We do probably 6,000 tax returns a year for free. But if you also are looking for a volunteer opportunity, we're looking for people to be preparers too.
ARP still, they do the taxes over there.
They do them too, yep.
So you have both groups?
Yeah, we do a lot, and they do a lot. It's great. People really are thrilled with it. You know, it's, I mean, depending on what you pay for your tax return, it could save people between $400 and $800. That's a lot of money just to get your taxes returned. And they're very nice. It's very comfortable and easy. So, just as an aside, if anyone wants to do that.
That's just an example of, it might seem like a little thing, but oh my God. You know, you're getting ready to do your taxes and then you've got to go and do it. So,
Yep. We took my father-in-law this year because he was a little nervous about that. He didn't really think, and he thought, I'm not going to United Way for my taxes. That doesn't make sense to me. And he went, and the guy who did his taxes was from Jersey City, where my father-in-law grew up. And they started talking about the war, and it was amazing. He said, this was like the greatest morning I've had in a long time. And it was free. And his taxes were done perfectly. So a lot of people really think it's the greatest thing. It just can't be a complicated tax return, but you can, you know, call up and make an appointment on the phone. I think you can actually go online and do it too.
do you think that long-term care life insurance is going to help this age group?
You know, it's evolving so much. A lot of players are getting out of the business because it ended up being a lot more expensive than they thought. There are now, we've had presentations on it actually, financial like annuities that you can buy and insurance policies that you can buy that allow you to save money for a long-term policy, but if you don't end up using it, the money is not lost. And that's a whole new thing. Whereas the past policies, pretty typical of life insurance policies, if you didn't use the money, it went away. So my mother has a long-term care insurance policy. Hopefully she never has to use it, but if she doesn't use it, all the money we've been paying is gone. Now there are different ways. Yeah, that's the way it always has been. Yeah.
I want to take an opportunity to thank our speaker today and the information they provided, and see, is there any additional questions before we wrap everything